Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make this fun trifold card, and it's actually really frugal to make with supplies because we're just going to use a pre-made card base, and we are going to just kind of use up some scraps and some washi tape and other things that are in the scrap pile or hoarded on our desk. You know, the piles build up. I know all about it. The stamps I'm using are from our sponsor, artneco.com. Save 10% by using the coupon code FrugalCrafter whenever you order. I'll put all that information in the video description. 10% off your order or free shipping if your order is over 50. You get the discount that is greater. This is just so fun to flip through, even though it's not a very exciting card. I'm going to teach you a kind of exciting technique. We're going to color. We're going to do no line coloring with alcohol markers. Then we're going to color the back with watercolors, because you'll notice with this marker paper that things bleed through. So the paper that I'm going to color on is the Strathmore marker paper. You can use any cardstock though. It'll work very similar. Just get the smoothest cardstock you can find, and you're going to want a very light ink pad. So I've got this ink pad. It's called Desert Sand by Memento, and I'm using a Memento ink pad because Memento works really well with alcohol markers. It doesn't matter what brand you're using. Use Sharpies, use Bic Markets, use Copics, use Spectrum Noir, whatever you have, Pro markers. Prismacolor, they're all good. And they'll all work together. So you can always get a few, build your collection over time. You don't need to go out and spend hundreds of dollars doing this. So I'm just going to stamp this on about a half a sheet of that marker paper. And this came in just it came in this set of marker bag that I picked up, a little sample pad there, but they do have it in larger packs. But like I said, cardstock's going to work just fine for this. It's nothing too exciting. I am giving this some pretty good pushes because I forgot to put like a pad of paper underneath it to help it squish. But it is kind of a no-line technique, so it doesn't matter if it doesn't stamp perfectly because we really don't want to see the lines. But there you can see that pretty design. And I also wanted to let you know at this point where we're letting that ink dry that I took a regular card base, just one of the inexpensive ones from Michael's, and I just sliced a part of it off, okay? And then we're going to reassemble it so we end up with a trifold card. Okay, kind of like a gatefold card. You could also, if you are, you could also just kind of fold it that way if you're making your card with a half a sheet of cardstock from scratch. That will totally work. But if you have a bunch of these pre-folded cards already, it's a great way to kind of do something different with them. And I also went ahead and just dug into my scrap bin and cut a piece of cardstock, cut a piece of pattern paper to fit on the inside. Try to pick something that's not too bold that you could actually write on top of if you wanted to. And then I just saved the scrap for doing our sentiment stamping. And I'm going to show you how I like to do that if I haven't cut a sheet of stamps apart yet. So this set by Art Neco has very script, playful type sentiments. It kind of reminds me of the Walt Disney handwriting script font. It's just really cheerful and fun and great for all ages. So what I'm doing is just using a water-based marker. You want to use your water base for this, not your alcohol markers for this. And I'm inking up the sentiment that I want, and then I'm just going to breathe on it because that moistens the ink. And then I'm just going to carefully put my paper down on top and smooth my finger over it to transfer the ink. Now, if you don't get a perfect impression, don't worry, because you can touch it up with your marker, which is nice. So there's Happy Birthday. It's not perfect because this is kind of a flimsy paper. It would work better with cardstock, but what I can do is just go in with my marker any place where my marker's kind of old and getting a little worn because I do a lot of stamping, stamp coloring with them. Just kind of go in and touch it up. I don't know how the fine tip is on this one because it's kind of old. If it's got some juice in it, I can fill it in that way. But that's a way to fill it in if your stamping isn't perfect. And I'm going to set that aside. Now we're getting back to coloring. Now that this will be nice and dry, I'm going to zoom in. You can see that well. All right, and what I did was I chose a few different shades of kind of like pinky corals and kind of olive greeny colors. So there's a couple different ways to color, and it kind of depends on the markers that you have. If you're using markers that don't like to blend very well, or maybe your cardstock isn't the best for blending, what you can do is take your lightest shade of ink and color the entire area in. and that's really gonna mute down the lines, because remember we stamped in a really, really pale tan. You can also stamp with a really light gray if that's your preference. If like maybe you're going with something with a cooler tone to it. These have kind of a warmer tone, so that's what I'm doing. And then after I've put that that really pale color, I like to go in with my darkest so I don't lose that detail. Now be warned that reds and purples are probably the hardest ones to blend, so work quickly or just work on a little portion at a time, blend it, and then work on another section. Now I'm going to go with my next darkest color, and I'm going to go right over that red and try to spread it out a little bit. And then my next dark, you know what? I think I grabbed the wrong one. I think this is the one that's closest to that red. Yeah, this one should be the second one. You're basically working dark to light again. But don't worry if you get out of order, because you can just keep coloring over until you get it to the blend that you like. Now I'm going to go back into that color I just had. Smudge some of those colors together, and I'll go into my lightest color. And if you have pens that have bullet tips, tinier bullet tips, totally go and use the bullet tip. That might be a little easier, especially with a red or a purple, because you can force those colors together a little bit more. And then finally, if you want to go back in with your darker color, redefine. You can do that as many times as you like, really. It's kind of tiny little petals, so I just kind of keep it a little sketchy. All right. You can go and keep working over that. You know, go blend again if you want, until you get it just right, but I'm not going to fuss with it too much. So the other way that I like to color, and this is the way I personally choose to color most of the time, is I'll start in with my my darkest color. And I find that if you kind of can lightly feather your strokes up, it does make the transition a little bit more natural. Let's see, I think this is my next darkest one. Going right over the edge and pulling that color up as much as I can. I probably should have chose a different color for this, but you'll see on the green it's much easier to blend. That peach is nice. It kind of warms the whole thing up, so I kind of like to go over everything with that peach just because it does give it a pretty warm feeling. And then with my kind of powdery pink color. So it just depends on kind of how much space you have to blend and what you like to do. And if you want it more intense, just do the process over again. While that paper's wet with the ink underneath, it helps it blend. So that will just, you know, that's why priming the paper like we did in the first one can be helpful. You can see it does kind of soften out as we go. I think I have enough of that peach color, so I just went in with my lightest kind of blushy color there. Maybe just back in a little bit of that next to the darkest color and just hit that underneath those turned over petals up there. Okay, and then you color the other one however you like, but there's two options right there. Now for the leaves, again, you can do the same way. There are 3 shades of green, and you can go with your method where you go dark to light. So we'll do that here. We'll start in with our darkest color and go right over those really pale lines, so they're not very noticeable. You feather your lines to make them a little bit easier to blend. Mid-tone. There's so many great markers. People ask me what's my favorite. Ask me, I'd have a different answer every different day. I think I like them all. And that one, I think what makes the biggest difference is if it has a brush nib. I like a brush nib, but they do seem to add on to the cost when you have a brush nib. Okay, so that gives you a pretty good blend there. So if I want to go the other way and do the whole thing, I can do it just like I did that first flower. I can color it in all light, and then I can go dark to light again. So I'll go back in. You need to pay attention to which end the tip is on, the brush is on. Now, if you have a tough time blending something, the brush end I'm sorry, the chisel end, because it's firmer, it can help you push colors together. So kind of keep that in mind. I know a lot of people never even touch the chisel end, but that can, I'll show you here. You can kind of use that, because it's a little firmer, you can go in and kind of use that to blend with. And it does soften a little bit. Green's usually a nice color to blend. Alright, so I'm going to color the rest of the stems and leaves off camera because it's pretty self-explanatory. Well, I'll do the stems with you just because I like to do the stems kind of light. And I like to do them with the tip of the brush marker because it does kind of help them be a little painterly. And then put a little shadow with the medium color up near the tops of the flowers. And any place else I think there would be a little shadow. And then I like to use my darkest for those little bits that are right around the flower itself, because I think that looks a little bit more, natural. And that's what I do. So I'm going to color the other 3 leaves and flower head, and then we'll be back and we're going to make the card. Okay, so I colored that pretty quickly, and the next thing I want to show you is making this a reversible image. So I'm going to flip it over, and as you can see, these colors transferred onto the back. So what I like to do in that event is take some watercolors and kind of fill in my design with some watercolors. And you don't have to be a painter, you don't have to be you don't have to be a good artist to do this. I just want to go in there and add some color. I'm adding some kind of lemon yellow. I'm going to add some kind of magenta color so I get that nice peach. And basically, I'm going to give myself a double-sided image here that we'll be able to use as one of our little flaps on our trifold, which I think is really kind of fun. That one there where we had put down a lot of ink first, that really shows up really good on this side. Now this technique is something I saw in an art journal video by Jane Davenport, and I thought it was just such a clever idea to like use that ghost image from the previous page to start off the next page, and I thought, why don't we do that with a card? That would just be really, really fun, and kind of put a new dimension, new spin on our work, and then we also get a little more bang for our buck because we get to have two images for the price of one. So I thought that was really fun. And have fun with it. Don't worry about it being perfect. It should look like hand-painted little flowers. Okay, grab a little bit of sap green, paint in those stems, paint in those little leaves up here. And since you've painted it once, it's really going to be easy. Of course, you're painting the opposite because we have a mirror image here, but it's pretty much the same thing you just did on the other side, except this time we're keeping it a little bit more painterly. Now, this is not watercolor paper, so don't expect it to behave like watercolor paper. You're not going to be able to blend on it so well, but you can bring that, that design to the back side. So we want to let that dry, and while that's drying, we can work on our card base. So let's set this aside. And what I'm going to do, and again, you can score, like I said before, you can totally make this by scoring your card at irregular intervals. So you have, maybe like a 1-inch flap here and or 1 1/4 inch flap here and a 4-inch flap here, and get that width. It doesn't matter, really. It's up to you. You can totally freehand it. I wanted to use some washi tape because I just think it's a really fun media, and I know a lot of us have collected it, and even though this isn't like, I have a lot of washi tape downstairs, but I'm working upstairs in my office, and I really think it's important to use what you have and not worry about making everything completely perfect. You come up with some really cool ideas and variations that way. So I'm just using one piece to hinge that panel on to, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here for you, to hinge that panel to my card base, so it's like that. Then I like to seal it shut and just snip off the ends, and that gives me a nice good seal there. And then I like to put something on the inside. You could do another thick piece of washi tape, you could do a thin piece, you could glue a strip of paper. It really, you know, the sky's the limit. Use what you have. Dig into that scrap pile that I know you've been hoarding and use some stuff. Let's stick that down right there. I like washi tape because it's kind of easy to see the seam, and I even just fold it right over. I don't care if you can see it from the back side. I think that adds to the charm of everything. And then on the inside, and the reason I did this first of all is because I smeared, I got some wet paint smudged on the inside, and I thought, oh, I know, I'll just, I'll stick some pattern paper in there, and I like the look of it so much that I decided to do it on purpose this time. See, nobody ever knows if something's a mistake or if it's a design element. Keep them guessing. I don't think anyone would ever think that that's a, you know, that you made a mistake. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out while I'm waiting for that other piece to dry. And I find that if I use long blade scissors, I can get a much straighter cut than if I like try to use my micro tip scissors. That way I don't have to drag out the my paper trimmer just for one little thing like that. And I am going to use, what I usually do, I don't have a scrap right now, but I'll usually have little scraps of washi tape because I will, you know, you'll peel a piece off and it maybe doesn't tear perfectly, so you stick that piece aside. But I actually didn't have any scraps because I'd used them up on the last card, so. I like to mix and match washi tapes too. That way nothing gets too precious and nothing has to be, you know, you don't have to feel beholden to any one supply. Alright, so let's grab this back again. I'm just going to blast it real quick with a heat tool, dry up that last little piece there. And I'm going to grab just a scrap of paper so I can do a little inking on my edges here. And I'm just using a little color duster. Some people had asked me in my last stamp school what these were for. They hadn't seen them before. And basically, they're just like a shaving brush, basically. And I like to sweep my ink on my backgrounds when I just want a soft inked background because I find it a lot easier to deal with than using a blending sponge for whatever reason. This just gives me a better result. But you can use a sponge. You can use whatever you like to for blending. So there, we got that. If you want, you can add splashes. I'm not going to because I only have to wait for that to dry, but that's what it looks like with splashes. And I am going to attach this. Well, let's move this out of the way. Those, you can use those with any ink pads. I wouldn't mix dye and pigment ink on the same brush. I would have one for each. I just basically have one in each color family, and it works out pretty well for me. So what I'm going to do here is close this up and see what it looks like. And I think I want this attached kind of like that. And I am going to use this tape, same one I used on the other side. Just want to get a little bit more than the length so I can trim it if I want to. And I think it might be easier just to kind of get this on my panel and then stick it down. I just want to get just a little bit on the edge. Okay, and I can lift it up. Washi tape is not super sticky, so you can reposition it until you get it just the way you want. And I want this to just kind of overlap a little bit. Kind of like that, I think. Oh, that pretty much is flush with the side of my paper. I'm going to fold this down. And I'm not sure, actually, you know what? I think I want this to come out a little bit further because I want the skinny tape. I've got to make this a little more secure. If I just go on with another piece, I'm either going to have adhesive hanging over, or I'm going to have, I'm just going to have too flimsy of a connection here, so this is a little bit better. Now I can go in with the same tape here, or I can use a different one. I think I will use the same one just because I've got kind of a wide piece there. So pull off another piece and go right on top of that. And again, you can fold it over or you can trim it, up to you. So let's make sure that doesn't hang. Ooh, that's hanging over the side. Okay, back to the drawing board. That is not what I want unless I want to trim that panel, which I don't, because I want this to fit. I don't want to lose my design, and I want this to fit in. See, this is part of the design process, guys. I don't edit it out. You can see how it really goes. Okay, so let's relook at this situation. I want to have a strong bond. I want my card to not fall apart in the mail, but I don't really want it hanging over, so why don't we do this? Why don't we make this flush with the side of the card, and why don't we put this back over, this will be just decorative purposes, just because it looks pretty. It'll look neater if we do this. And then let's just do a thin strip of this just to kind of jump the gap there. All right, so see, now you're gonna know how to fix it if you have something hanging over too far or whatever. Because before I had this tape overhanging a little bit, and then I could see some of the bare tape, and then I ran that the entire length. But apparently the last piece of paper I used must have been a little bit smaller, but this will work. There, so now that's nice and sturdy, and that's what we want. Okay, and then to do a little more decorating, I'm just going to use washi tape. It's easy, it's fun, it's self-adhesive. Really, what more could you ask for when you're talking about a really fun, versatile supply? I'm going to pull off enough that I can wrap it all the way around. Pull it to the inside, and then, you know, it makes your card look a little more special when you've got those little pops of pattern. And I also think it's kind of nice if you have any reservations with working with pattern. If it makes you nervous, it takes a lot of the fear away, I think. And there you have it. I mean, you can obviously embellish this more. You can trim off any little bits of hanging over tape, but I think it's a lot of fun. Here's the one I did with the splashes. I really like that. It fits in a regular envelope, so you can dress up your envelope a little bit to make it a little more special. But it's just a fun, neat card idea. It's a great way to use up those bulk A2 cards or any bulk card pack that you might have, because sometimes those cards tend to be a little bit flimsier. So if you can add different flaps like this, it just gives it a little bit more interest, and it makes it feel a little bit more sturdier in your hands. And when you stand it up, you can stand it up kind of like that on a shelf or on a mantle or whatever. So it just gives it a little bit more dimension, and I think it's kind of fun. And you know, it's a great way to use up some scraps. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please give me a thumbs up. I'll put a list of supplies in the video description and information on how you can save 10% at our sponsor, artanddeco.com. They have lots of wonderful stamps, and they're really nice people, so I love it if you go check them out. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.